changed over the years, but the words and the sentiment have always stayed the same. Good morning, America.
For nearly 20 years, TV viewers woke to veteran journalist Joan Lunden, greeting them on ABC's Good Morning America. She has called it the best seat from which to view the world.
I was just kind of living my life, as a young woman trying to figure out how you keep a very high-profile job and have a child at the same time.
Lunden's tenure with the network ended in 1997. By then, she had 3 daughters and went through a very public divorce. Fittingly, she penned a book about change, and various network projects followed, including commercial endorsements for elder care. But it was in the early 2000s when Lunden made her own headlines. By this time, she's in her early 50s, and with second husband Jeff, gave birth to 2 sets of twins via a surrogate.
She's chosen to come here this morning to share something personal.
In 2014, the then 63-year-old returned to her former Good Morning America home to announce she had an aggressive form of breast cancer. Always the advocate, Lunden documented her treatment and recovery, sharing her journey in her 7th book, Had I Known. Now cancer-free, Lunden's returned to morning television, reporting about baby boomers, aging, and friendships on NBC's Today Show. But it was during an interview promoting the series where she says she got a wake-up call.
This young guy, he answers the phone when I called in for the interview, and his first question to me was, well, Miss Lunden, what is it going to be like for you going back to morning television as a senior citizen? I almost fell off my chair. I mean, okay, fine, technically I am, but I've never really thought of myself as one, and I'd never actually been called a senior citizen. And, it made me think afterwards, is that how he sees me?
Lunden truly believes age is just a number and uses her wit and humor to explore getting older in her latest book, Why Did I Come Into This Room?
It's not just talking to other women that I didn't want to just talk to them about their bodies and about their bladders and about their forgetfulness, but also about how they feel about aging and how, others see us and how that we want to stay vibrant and not to let, some little guy like that who's probably not shaving change our opinion of ourselves, because our mindset is maybe one of the most important things.
Lunden, welcome to St. Louis virtually.
I know. It's great, though, that I can be with you.
Yes, we're glad to have you. And I welcome you and thank you for joining us. I know a lot of our viewers and listeners, because we put this on a podcast as well here in the area, remember you from Good Morning America and ABC. And of course, all the things you're doing now, being an elder advocate. We see you on the commercials for a place called Home. Isn't that what it was called?
A place for mom.
A place for mom. A place for mom. And then you're doing some commercials now as well. Is it for Medicare?
Yeah, it's for Assurance. It's for Medicare. Medicare is so complicated. So I'm working with a company that they just kind of go down through it all and just make sure that you're getting the most coverage, but paying the least amount that you need to pay.
I love it.
Anything I can do to help boomers and seniors, that's kind of, been a passion of mine, having gone through taking care of my mom and making all the mistakes along the way. And then just in this new world of ours where we're all still so active, engaged in life, but we're still having to figure out Social Security, like, okay, I'll sign up for it, and Medicare.
Well, that's where I am. I'm in my early 60s.
Okay.
But I have to tell you, I'm going to go back a little bit in time because I feel very personal kinship to you, because as I was starting my career in broadcasting, going from radio as a teenager and college, my first TV jobs, I always have done morning news. So while you were doing your national and ABC Good Morning America, and I worked for an ABC affiliate, basically all three affiliates in different markets, and ended up in St. Louis. I mean, I was the first in the newsroom to have a baby in the 80s. So as I'm having a baby, you're having a baby.
I'm having a baby.
I loved it. And for you, I'm telling you, Joan, for you to bring home or bring into the station and to the network, into the studios and behind the scenes, your firstborn, that was a game changer for our industry and for women in general. So I thank you for being a trailblazer.
Thank you. You know, I just did that because I was sitting in my little cubicle in the local WABC New York newsroom. My phone rang and it was my gynecologist telling me that I was pregnant with my first child. And then like 30 minutes later, I got the call from my attorney saying that I had gotten the job as co-host of Good Morning America. Like within 30 minutes, it was delight and dilemma. And they really wanted to make a change and get a new co-host in. I was literally leaving on maternity leave, but we made our deal. And I said, I went back and I think my little Jamie, who's now just turned 40, I think she was like maybe 7 weeks old. So they wanted me to get into that seat bad enough that ABC said, you can bring the baby to work with you. I don't even know if they realized what they were getting themselves into, but I said, I'm breastfeeding. I'll come back, but I'm breastfeeding. And there's this thing that the baby needs to be with you if you're breastfeeding. This is when you shouldn't even say breast in a meeting with a bunch of men. And they said, okay, bring the baby along. We'll give you a little room. You can put, somebody in there to watch the baby while you're on the air. And I said, but if I have to go on any stories, and sure enough, later that next year, Jamie was not even quite, I guess she had just turned 1, and I was off to London to cover the wedding of Prince Charles to Lady Diana, and I took Jamie along with me. I'm not going to say it was easy all the time, but I just kind of put one foot in front of the other back then. And as a working mom with a brand new baby, I know that we changed norms all over throughout every corporation, not just television, because I've heard from all those women over the years. I was just kind of living my life, as a young woman trying to figure out how you keep a very high profile job and have a child at the same time.
But you did have that national platform, and I give ABC credit for,
I do too.
Sharing into that, because they were all great behind the scenes, but they weren't as gracious and accommodating on the local level. It took a little bit longer. And, I have to say early mornings were a great way to raise a child. And I had to laugh because in this book, you do go back and mention how once you left early mornings, how you're like, oh, gee, I thought I missed so much getting the kids ready for school.
Oh,
that really wasn't a big deal.
Absolutely not.
I could totally relate. I laughed so many times in the book. You've got such a great wit. But, I look now at your family. Okay, so who would have thought then that, okay, fast forward, life goes on. Okay, a divorce happens. You remarry a guy 10 years younger. Way to go. And then again, another trailblazer in your early 50s. You have 2 sets of twins. Now,
I've kind of been at the head of the curve on this, but I got married when I was 29 the first time, and I married a guy who was 39. Didn't work out, but
yeah, and he was in the business too.
20 years later, when I was 49, I got married again, and again I married a guy who was 39.
I love it. But you've always exuded such happiness, and no matter what was going around you. I remember, you've written 8 books, and I think I read your autobiography moons ago, and I remember it stuck with me. Yeah,
Good morning, I'm Joan Lunden.
Yes.
That's this is the one that kind of started it all.
And I have, that's the book I have. And
that was from a long time ago.
Yes, well, I read it a long time ago.
We've been around.
I remember it just stuck with me because you were very transparent before Oprah made it transparent, to be honest. And I remember reading, and it stuck with me all these years, how you said, as you're going through this trauma, going through divorce, and you're still having to go on the air, and you just said,
yeah,
I could cry in my car, but when I was on the air, I was professional and I gave it my all. And as a young broadcaster, that stuck with me. And it's true. It's all people see is, Joan or Victoria talking to them, right?
But you know what, Victoria, it's, this last book I wrote, which was about aging, because a long, long, long time ago, right after I'd written the next 2 books, Healthy Cooking, Healthy Living, they were both bestsellers. And so a publisher comes back to you and says, okay, write another book. And you feel like you've squeezed every last thought out of your brain. And I remember when I looked at my book agent one day and said, what am I going to write about next? He said, you will always write about that which you want to know more about. And it was so true, because when I left Good Morning America, I wrote a book about change. A bend in the road is not the end of the road. When I went through a cancer battle, I wrote Had I Known, all about that memoir of survival. So then I came to this book and I thought, so what am I dealing with now? Aging.
Yep.
And is that something that a huge segment of our population, 76 million baby boomers, and forget the ones after that, all the seniors, this is like a huge topic. And then I really started to think about it. And I thought, we overshare everything on social media these days, but somehow we don't talk about these things that women go through as they age. I don't know why they should be taboo subjects. Not much else is taboo in today's world. But when women start to age and their estrogen starts to go down, and that's why we experience aging so much differently than men, when that estrogen starts plummeting, things happen. And if these aren't things that we're all talking about comfortably out here in the open, you kind of feel like it's just happening to you and there's something wrong with you. Like, oh my gosh, like why do I have a leaky bladder? Oh my gosh, why do I not have a waistline anymore? Oh my gosh, why can't I sleep at night? Why can't I lose weight like I used to? Right. These are all pre-programmed natural things that happen to every woman. And that's a terrible path to go down, because when you go down that path, you go from what's wrong with me to I'm not as appealing, I'm less sexy. Pretty soon you're at I'm less relevant. And then you kind of close yourself off to all kinds of opportunities that would still be open to you because of the way you feel about how you're aging. So I wanted to throw it all out there. And of course, I knew I'd have to do it with a sense of humor.
And you do. You have such a great wit and humor about talking about these things. And also you've talked about uncomfortable sex too, which, I mean, trust me, that's not something my mom and I ever sat down and chatted about.
Absolutely not. My mother's generation never would have talked about any of this. But the problem is that if we don't acknowledge these things and say, wait a minute, it's not just you, there's not something wrong with you. This is what happens to all women. And I tried to give the reason for them. Why do these things happen? And then there are fixes for a lot of these things. And if we don't ever talk to our gynecologist or our primary caregiver, physician, we won't ever find those out unless you read the book, of course.
Of course. And it's so many great things. One thing that I want to talk about that you weren't able to put in the book, because I think it came out in March. Is that correct?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So back in March, our world changed because COVID came out, quarantine. So here we are, so I'm looking at this going, okay, I'm over 60, check. All right. Oh, I am a high risk because I have an autoimmune disease, which my lungs are compromised now because of this. Mm-hmm. So great. Now I'm high risk. So you're 70, a breast cancer survivor. Right. How did you handle COVID with not only that, you've got children, teenagers in the house. You've
Four of them. Four
of them and grandchildren. So how has COVID affected you, and what advice do you give folks? Because we're still in it.
So, a page out of Joan London's playbook. Yes, I am definitely at risk for a number of reasons. I had several double viral lung infections a few years ago, and I have a little asthma, and of course my age. And so I was really, I've been very, very careful, but at the same time, I thought, I'm not just going to sit around. These are decisions we make. Happiness is a choice. Boredom is a choice. And so like a week went by and I started doing Facebook Lives every day at 1:00. And my husband, after a while, said, I don't get it. Like every time I see you, you're on the phone, you're booking a guest, you're researching, you're writing interviews, you're on the air. Like, why are you doing this? It's not a job of yours. And I said, because I'm good at it, because it's fun, because I'm not bored. Everybody's talking about being bored. I'm not bored. And I did it up until the summer. And then everyone was like, you can't take the summer off. And I said, oh yeah. Because I'm also it's not all work and no play. Right. You have to plan your life. And I think that's one of the big things. My mom told me when I was a little girl, always have plans. She said, I always plan a party. Of course, she would say, I always plan a party once a year at the house. So I really clean the house.
And it's true. She's so right.
She said that's what keeps life exciting, is to have plans, because half the fun is anticipating it and getting ready for it. And I think that's really important when you reach your 50s and 60s. Don't think that it's just over. There's no need to check out, but there is a need to have a lot of plans. Think about what your life has been. Was there something that you wished you would have done that you didn't do? Do you wish you would be a different kind of person? I talk about this in the book. It's just not about leaky bladders and loss of libido. I talk about getting to this pivot point where we have this opportunity to kind of allow ourselves to exhale,
right?
Look back, say, you know what? I made it through a lot of challenges, and here I am. To be able to appreciate our past, appreciate the people in our life, accept who we are now, and plan for our future. Because if you don't plan, you might end up bored.
Well, one of the things you did mention, you give tools for all of us through the book about what we can do. It's not just not information. And you say you go to the experts, but you always say these are other things you can do. And one of them is get outside and breathe in the air and get some sunshine. Because I can't imagine how many people felt isolated, or still do, through this COVID.
Yeah, it's led to a lot of depression. Yeah. And one of the best things for depression or just high stress anxiety is to get outdoors. And it sounds so simplistic that it's almost hard to give it as advice, but being outdoors and breathing in fresh air and having the sunshine, especially in the morning hours. If you get that sunshine in the morning hours, it can really help you go to sleep at night, because a lot of people have had trouble sleeping because of all this. What I wanted to give in the book, besides all the expert advice that I gleaned from all the research that I did, I wanted to give small changes that are somewhat easy to make, that make a huge impact on your health and on your longevity. It's like, I was out to dinner last night with my mother-in-law. It was their anniversary, their 65th anniversary.
Wow.
She met him.
Congratulations to them.
13. Wow. And she does it. And she had gone to the doctor because she needs some surgery. And she said, I'm low in electrolytes. I said, well, then you're not drinking water. She said, that's the same thing the doctor said to me. I said, Janie, I see it all the time. You don't drink water. And I said, it's critically important to your health.
Got mine right here.
Here we go.
Yep, thank you. Here we go. See?
Now, I'm going to admit that I'm not a good water drinker, but I had to learn to become one when I was going through chemo, because it's really important that you flush the chemo out, that you keep your veins, plump. And so my fitness instructor gave me these little plastic thin bracelets. You get them on Oriental Trading, like 100 for $7 or something. And I put like 10 of them on my right wrist, because we're really not honest with ourselves. Like, you can ask me, how many glasses of water have you had today? And I'd say probably 2. The truth is I poured 2, but I've only had 1. But we're not really honest with ourselves. So every time I'd actually consumed a glass of water, I'd put that one on the other arm. Yeah. And I learned real quick that I'd often have 7 of them still on my right arm at 6 o'clock at night. Note to self, don't try to make up that water at 6 o'clock at night.
And that's that other part of when we talk about getting up. My time is 2:30 or 3 in the morning. I always make that beeline to the bathroom. And there's an art to just trying to go right back to bed. And it's just awful.
So if you haven't read that part of the book, that is the time of night that our liver is having its time to take care of itself. Right. And often, and one of the things that it needs, we deplete during the day because we are filled with adrenaline, because we're anxious and we're going through all this stress. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake up because your body is, your liver is trying to do its job, but it needs, and I forget the name of this certain thing. And in order to produce that, it creates adrenaline. So it's that adrenaline that's waking you up.
So I want to go back a little bit in time. It was so weird as I was getting ready for the interview. I looked back and I popped on Facebook. I was promoting you on a radio show I was doing back in 2013. I'm like, oh, tune in, and talking with Joan Lunden about healthy living, because I did a health and lifestyle show on a radio show that I was part of. And then we go a year later in 2014, and that's when the doctor tells you those dreaded words, you've got cancer. So please share why you have said in other platforms that this diagnosis was one of the best things that ever happened to you. Explain in what ways has this been good for you?
I mean, people have a hard time hearing that, but I mean, it really is true. Nobody wants to hear those words. You have cancer. And you know, I was like one of those people that says, hey, I eat right, I exercise, I don't really have it in my family. Had I known that less than 15% of women diagnosed with breast cancer ever had a family history, I wouldn't have been so, you know, nonchalant. However, my dad was a doctor. He was a cancer surgeon. And everywhere we would go, his patients would meet us in the street or in a restaurant, and they would embrace him and say, thank you for saving my life or my wife's life. And, you know, they would bend down like to get eye to eye with me as a little girl. And they'd say, do you know how important your daddy is to our family? Wow. And I grew up saying, I want to be like that. I want to be a doctor. I want to help people stay healthy. Then the summer before college, I went to work in a hospital that my dad had helped to found and build. And I found out real quick, stitches, scalpels, that was not happening in my lifetime. But my dad was a pretty renowned cancer surgeon back in those days, and he would speak at cancer conventions all over. And, you know, he was an avid private pilot, so he would fly to other cities and assist in difficult surgeries. And coming back from one of those conventions, he crashed and was killed at only 51 years old. And I think that made me more, I just felt like I should do something to carry on his legacy. Then I really got into it and started going to Washington and really was lobbying for women to get mandatory mammogram reporting, because women didn't know if they had dense breast or not. Mm-hmm. And half of the women in America have dense breast tissue. And if you have that, you need more than a mammogram. I got a clean 3D mammogram that day, a clean 3D, because as I've now been told by the experts, cancer shows up as white on a mammogram, and so does dense tissue. So it's kind of like looking for a snowball in a snowstorm. So I just felt it incumbent upon me to go out and spread the word and empower women with this kind of information. And in so doing, I really was carrying on my dad's legacy. Yeah. Yes. I got the opportunity to do that. And, you know, at the end of my life, if that little dash, if that's what it's all about, I'm super happy with that. So it was a gift.
Oh, one thing I want to talk about, dieting and weight. That's been one of my nemesis my whole career. I don't know if it's because we were on TV that we're more sensitive to it, but it's always been a challenge for me as well. So back in the day, I ran a lot. Can't do that anymore. Now I walk, play golf, pickleball. How important is it for us to move, even those of us who might have arthritis issues?
So it is so important that we move for so many different reasons. Obviously for our cardiovascular, you know, for our heart, and to maintain our weight. And maintaining our weight is really important, but it's also for our brain. Yes. And, you know, when I did the research about the brain, and I learned that, you know, they used to think that your hippocampus, that part of your brain that's your memory and your ability to remember a word, or where you parked your car when you walked out of the mall.
Or like I did the other day, I couldn't find my keys, and I'm not kidding you, Joan. I found them in the pantry inside of a licorice bag, my car keys. Yes. And I thought, oh my Lordy, this is scary. I was like, oh,
you know what? This is, I knew that I think that's the scariest part of all the things that happen to us as we age, which is why I called the book, Why Did I Come Into This Room? If you're 20 and you walk into a room and you can't remember, like, you don't care. But if you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, like, you're sure that it's the beginning of something bad. And by the way, the good news is that it's usually not. It's usually age-appropriate forgetfulness. And the reason why is that researchers used to believe that our hippocampus started shrinking in our 60s. They have now discovered it starts shrinking at about age 30.
Really?
It shrinks a little bit over time, but there are things we can do. They also thought that we were born with like 300 billion neurons and that was it, and they just started deteriorating over time. Now we know that that's not true, that neurogenesis, the creation of new neurons, continues to happen, especially if we create neurons. And we can do that by challenging our brain. It can be anything, but learning something new is the most important. But the best way is exercise, cardio aerobic exercise, because that pumps nutrients and oxygen and blood up to our brain. And those neurons that are created are the most adept at connecting to our central system and slowing down cognitive decline. And as soon as I really embraced that concept, I couldn't wait to put my sneakers on, because now I was going to go out and do that power walk, make sure I kept my cognitive thinking, not just to try to stay in the jeans and button them.
Right. And you say, one thing you said is part of that is staying engaged with life. You know, you mentioned joining clubs, when you wake up in the morning, you mentioned you want someone to talk to, being active. I think we women are pretty good about that, aren't we?
They say there are 3 things that will determine how successfully we age. Number 1, staying engaged in life. That's what you talk about, having a reason to get up and get out of bed. Social connections is number 2. It's the friends, not just the daughter who's coming over to take care of you. It's friends that you can call and share your joys as well and your sorrows with, and get together and just chit chat. And the third one is having a sense of purpose. And that doesn't mean that you have to go, work on some philanthropic association. It can be having a garden that needs you to get up and go out and weed it. It can be as simple as having these 3 books you bought that you want to read, but you have to have a reason to put those feet on the bed and on the floor in the morning and get dressed and get up and still stay engaged in life. And that's really the most critical things. It's friendships, it's engagement. That's what people miss. Frankly, right now, while we're in this pandemic and in this quarantine, that's what people miss. When you get older, it's not so much the number in your bank account. It's having friends and having a reason to get up and be part of life. And we're seeing that right now as people are alone. What are they really missing? They're not missing the fact that they can't go to a certain store. They're missing being with friends. But thank God we have Zoom.
Yeah.
And it's seemingly it's a verb now, because I've been Zooming with a lot of people.
It's so inspiring, Joan. I love it. But I also love, you have a lot of quotes in there, which I'm going to steal some. One of them was for those in the 40s or maybe 50s. When I asked for a smoking hot body, menopause was not what I had in mind. But I love chapter 26. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yes. I want to be cremated. It's my last chance for a smoking hot body.
That was great. I loved them. They were how fun to write the book. And thank you so much.
So much fun.
You were also helping those of us who can't seem to navigate, and I'm turning to you as a journalist here, how to navigate the internet with what's true and what's false. And it's Media-Wise for Seniors that you're involved
Media-Wise for Seniors. And
please explain that.
I really recommend, they started out with a program for high school students. They thought they'd try to get them young to be able to tell the difference between, fact and fiction, or opinion, or misinformation, or conspiracy theory. Then they did one for college students. Now they have one for seniors, really boomers and seniors. And I got to tell you, as I've spent my whole life as a journalist, seeking out facts, I learned, and it's a free online course. Facebook is a partner. They're giving the course online. Go to Media-Wise for Seniors. It's really important in this world that we're living in. Don't share things until you've done a reverse search, and they'll show you how to do a reverse search to find out, is somebody trying to get you to think this way, or is it really fact?
So true. And I was pleased to see that you were part of that. And
Yes.
I learned a lot at the Facebook Live. So anyone, one of us watching can join in when you do another one. So they can go live.
And it lives on my Facebook page.
Oh,
so
good.
they can go and see that one interview with Alex Mahadavan, who is a fact checker.
Right. Yeah, it was fascinating. I learned a lot as well. Well, Joan Lunden, thank you again. The book is Why Did I Come Into This Room? I'm glad I remember the title. Yay. A candid conversation with Joan Lunden about aging. So Joan, thanks again, and have a great rest of the day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.